So let us continue our, that is FIBSc Botany class. We are studying paper 1, unit 2, and that is fungi. We have already been discussing the topic, that is general characteristics of Phycomycetae. And in that, I think we have already covered what is the occurrence, where exactly these members of Phycomycetes are present, and what kind of hyphal structures they have. So continuing with the sessions, today we'll be talking about the asexual reproduction in the division that is Phycomycete. So does anyone of you know what exactly asexual reproduction could be called? Okay, so let us just begin with what exactly asexual reproduction is and how does it occurs in the Phycomycete members. So this is the picture depicting a kind of an asexual reproduction. So you can keenly observe what exactly is happening over here. There is one cell giving rise to two daughter cells, again dividing and giving rise to multiple of the copies of the cell, we can say. So in that sense, sexual reproduction could be any reproductive process which does not involve meiosis and or syngamy. So here we can say meiosis, if it would have been, one cell divides into 4 different cells with half the number of chromosomes. So here we can see one cell is dividing in only 2 cells and they look exactly the same copy of the first cells. So there is no meiosis occurring. So there is no syngamy as well. That kind of reproduction would be called as a asexual reproductions. So what happens that when there is absence of syngamy, syngamy is your fertilization or union of two different kinds of gametes. It could be male or female, or it could be a positive or a negative strain. They are genetically different. Wherever there is union of gametes, we call it as syngamy. So that kind of thing is not occurring, only simple one cell which is giving rise to two cells. There is no union of two different gametes. So in that conditions, what happens in asexual reproduction is there is no exchange of genetic material. Exchange नहीं होने वाला है. There is no new kind of genetic material coming to a single cell. इसके पास जो भी genetic material है, the first cells, same genetic material will be transferred to the daughter cells. So in the process, what happens? It is something like a making Xerox copies. You make duplicates of yourselves. So many of it, you can prepare many copies of same kind of cells. So it makes genetically identical kind of organisms. Is that clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So let us continue how such kind of asexual reproduction is occurring in the Phycomycete. So there are so many different kinds of spores. There are so many different kinds of means by which asexual reproduction may occur. Here some of the diagrams have been shown with a different kind of apparatus and different kinds of spores which may be giving rise to a identical kind of same kind of species. So in Phycomycetes what we get are zoospores. This is a very common asexually reproducing spores found in the very lower or the primitive Phycomycetes. Zoospores. Then there is conidiosporangium. Now whenever the term spores comes, these are actually the spores which will be germinating into a new being. And whenever the sporangium comes, the term, it means they are the containers in which these spores will be kept. Aplanospores, again a different kind of spores, and sporangiolum. This is again a kind of an apparatus which will be harboring different kinds of spores. So basically we can see there are two different types of spores, zoospores and aplanospores. And there could be different kinds of apparatus which may give rise to new organisms of the same kind. So let us continue having a look what exactly these zoospores are. Now here we can see the diagram showing a zoospores and the actual image of a single zoospore. So looking at it, we can say they are having the flagellum. So they are having locomotion, motility. So asexual spores, uh, which is present in lower fungi or algae. It is also found in many lower algae, which is capable of movement by means of flagella. So one thing is sure it is going to have, that is a flagellum. That's why we have the word that is zoospore, which can uh, move around, is motile in its locomotion. So this is one of the characteristics. Wherever zoospores are produced in whichever apparatus or a sac, they are called as the zoosporangia, a sporangium containing zoospores. Now, the types, they could be uniflagellated, that means having only one flagella, which we can see over here in the lower picture, which is having only one flagellum. Now, the flagella could be at the anterior or the posterior end. At any of the pole, the flagella could be present. And mostly, if it is a uniflagellate zoospores, it will have a whiplash kind of a flagella. Now, whiplash is something like whip, having the movement. जैसे कि रस्सी को अगर आप राइट एंड लेफ्ट मूव करोगे तो द वे इट मूव्स, और सर्कुलर मूव करते हैं, जैसे कि हम रस्सी उड़ी खेलते हैं ना, यू स्किप, डू द स्किपिंग. So that time, that kind of circular motion, that kind of motion is seen in the flagella. So we call it as a whiplash flagella. It is straight, elongated, and has a circular kind of a motion. It could be present in either of the pole of a zoospore. Then there could be a biflagellate. Bi means having two flagella. The one shown in the upper picture may have two flagellum. One will be whiplash kind and one will be tinsel. Tinsel means something having minute tentacles. Yeah, jhadu like this. No, not exactly looking like a jhadu, but something like that. So that kind will be present. Now here it could be either present at the anterior end of the zoo scene at the lateral. Now one shown over here is having a lateral uh, flagellum, both the flagella, lateral flagellum. So this is what we can see in the zoospores found in the Phycomycetes. I hope I am clear to all of you. My voice is clear.
Ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
So now what is, thank you, thank you. What is conidiosporangium? I said the word sporangium means it is the container which will be having spores. Now at many of the times whenever the climatic conditions may change slightly towards warmer or less humid conditions, the sporangia, the one which should have spores within it directly gets converted into a new organisms giving rise to the germ tube or the thallus, which will give rise to the thallus of the fungi. The sporangia itself behaves like a uh, conidia, which germinates. So such kind of sporangium is called as conidiosporangium, which directly gives rise to the new fungal species, new organisms of the fungus. So that's why those kind of sporangium are called as the conidiosporangium. Instead of giving rise to different kinds of spores, if you don't have the conditions and you feel कि suddenly गर्मी ज़्यादा बढ़ जाएगी, there won't be any humid conditions, we need to survive in such a conditions. जो sporangia होता है, the sac which should have spores which have not yet matured to be liberated, the sporangia itself gets converted into a new fungal organism. So that's why that kind of sporangia will be called as the conidiosporangia. This is not very common and occurs uh, only at when the temperatures are increasing, when the humidity starts decreasing, and when the fungus is not completely matured to give rise to the zoospores. At that conditions, this may happen. So the sporangium itself behaves as a conidia, having the dual functions of both, and hence called as the conidiosporangium. So next is aplanospores. Now this is the picture which depicts there is a sporangia which is giving rise to non-motile cells. They do not have any kind of flagella, they are just liberated or they are just adhered to the sporangiophore. So aplanospores, these all are non-motile, asexually reproducing spores which could be found in algae or fungi. In the lower algae and fungi, these all are found. Now when these are spores, they are usually uh, formed from the protoplasm or from the vegetative cells. Now in fungi, we have a special apparatus or special cell which harbors these aplanospores, sporangiophore, that is called as, or this is called as a sporangia, which harbors these aplanospores. But in algae, the same vegetative cells may sometimes get converted into a aplanospore. They have a rigid cell wall and they are meant for the survival in the harsh conditions. Due to the dehiscence, वो जो बहुत उनकी सेल वॉल होती है वो काफ़ी रिजिड होती है, सो दे कैन सर्वाइव वेन एवर द फेवरेबल कंडीशंस आर नॉट अवेलेबल. सो वेजिटेटिव सेल्स ग्रो होते जाते हैं जब तक आपको फेवरेबल कंडीशंस मिलते हैं, and as soon as you find that the conditions are not good, humidity is decreasing or temperature is decreasing, increasing or decreasing, or there is less of the food material, when they sense such kind of conditions, these kind of apparatus they will appear with aplanospores. Now these aplanospores may remain in the soil, in the substratum, in the air, and whenever they find that the conditions are good, they will germinate, giving rise to a new fungus organisms. Only difference is they are strict, having a tough cell wall, and they do not have flagellum. Whereas zoospores, they have delicate cell wall, rather not a true cell wall, and they have the flagellum for the locomotions. Now, there is one more terminology, that is sporangiolum, which is also related to the apparatus or the sporangium. Whenever the sporangium is very small in size, which does not contain many of the aplanospores within it, only few aplanospores are being able to produce. Such kind of sporangium is called as the sporangiolum. Miniature of the sporangia having aplanospores. So it will have only few aplanospores. In the previous picture we have seen there are numerous aplanospores within a single sporangia. So जब भी ये container, the apparatus or the sac will be very small, have very few aplanospores, maybe due to conditions are not so favorable to grow, and that's why it is called as the sporangiolum, a smaller version of the sporangium. I hope I have made myself clear till this much. What you have to remember basically is there are two different kinds of spores which could be produced, and there could be many a time a different kind of apparatus, that is onario, sporangium and sporangiola. Then we come to the sexual reproduction, how sexual reproduction occurs in Phycomycetes. Now, what could be the basic difference between a sexual and asexual reproduction? Presence of meiosis and syngamy, which were absent in the asexual reproduction. Now, in Phycomycetes, in the lower uh, fungal species, in the Phycomycetes, we may find heterothallic or homothallic kind of conditions. Now, what do we mean by heterothallic? The word itself says hetero. Hetero means different, and thallic means the thallus or the fungal body, the fungal hyphae. So, in a heterothallic, there are two different kinds of hyphae produced within the same kind of species. Now, here you can make out there is this species where the nucleus is shown as the blue color, which denotes that there is some genetic difference from this one, where it is red in color. So what we get in a same organisms, there are two different kind of genetic strains present. So thus that kind of strain will be called as a having heterothallic in nature. One is called as a plus strain, one is called as the minus strain. Morphologically अगर आप देखो, if you have a look, it looks exactly similar. There is no differences. But genetically, the genetic material is having minor differences in the allelic forms. So such kind of thalli, they can mate or they can produce zygote only when two different kinds of compatible strains are coming together. Only these two can go for a sexual reproduction, and they can produce a new zygote, which will give rise to the new fungus organisms. Same kind of strain cannot uh, go for a syngamy or a meiosis, and hence will not be sexually reproducing. Asexually, they are capable of reproduction, they can produce spores, they can survive, but for a sexual reproduction, these two kinds of strains should be available. So such kind of uh, sexual reproduction where they have a two different kind of thallus formation is called as the heterothallic. So they have different sexes which have different individuals. Uh, it is distinguishing two different compatible partners. One could be called as a plus strain and one could be called as the minus strain. So that becomes a heterothallic fungus, where exactly we can have two different strains within a same organism, within a same fungal species. Then exactly opposite of that would be homothallic, that which do not define two different strains. Now here they both are exact copy of each other, and they can go for a syngamy or meiosis and go for a sexual reproduction, giving rise to a new variant in the same species. So it is defined as having haploid phase that produces two kinds of gametes which are capable of forming a zygote. So any haploid phase which produces gametes and they both can unite with each other and give rise to a zygote. Homo and heterothallic is what we see in Phycomycetes. Now, what kind of union or what kind of fertilization is seen in the Phycomycetes? One of them is isogamy. Iso means same, isobilateral triangle, so that iso means same. So here we can see they are very morphologically very similar kind of or same kind of two gametes they are uniting. But genetically they are different. Here we can see there is a black kind of a nucleus and there is a slight gray kind of a nucleus. So we can say there are two different strains of gametes which are uniting, but morphologically they are looking very similar. Both are motile, both are having same size and shape. So that becomes isogamous. So it is a form of a sexual reproduction that involves gametes of similar morphology. Only looking at it, we can see morphologically they are similar, same. That doesn't mean that two same cells are united. They differ generally in some of the allelic expressions. So only minute differences we can see in their mating type. So they are very much similar. That's why we cannot say who is male, who is female, or which one is a plus strain, which one is a minus strain. So they are isogamous gametes. And the fusion or the syngamy is termed as the isogamy. Then we have anisogamy. ये सारे terms आपने I think you have already gone through all this, must be quite aware of all this. So it is very much like a repetition. Now aniso means different. So here we can clearly see there is one cell which is smaller in size and then there is one cell which is bigger in size and the union is occurring. Now here we can make out, we can term one as a plus sign, we can term one as a minus sign. But both are motile. So that is anisogamy. It is also called as a heterogamy, where it involves fusion of two gametes which differ in their size and or form. So there could be different types of anisogamy, flagellated or non-flagellated, or alternatively both non-flagellated, but they differ in their sizes and morphology. That is anisogamy. Then one type of the anisogamy. Now here this is also we can see the one cell which is motile and different in size, which is very small, and another cell which is very enlarged and is attached to the hyphal apparatus. So it is non-motile, which is called as the oogamy. This is also type of a anisogamy. So oogamous type is a type of anisogamous in which the female, the one which is larger and non-motile, is a female cell and the male one is a smaller and a motile gametes. So this kind is termed as the oogamy. Now in Phycomycetes, all the three kinds of these syngamy are seen in the fungal fertilization. So all the three could be possible in any of the fungal forms. I hope I am making clear. This would be rather a revision of what we have already studied till now. These topics, mitosis, meiosis and fertilization, I guess is there in the 12th standard. So it will be repetition what we are going to see. The point of characteristics of Phycomycetes. So now we have to come to the next topic, that is life cycle. Now what we can call as a life cycle. Here you can see there is a picture showing some of the stages, different stages of the bread mold. So everything which is included in this is a part of the life cycle, is part of the life of the particular fungus and hence would be called as the life cycle. What all we see here, we can see they are again making up spores and they are again germinating. So very small or sexual reproduction cycle we can see. जहाँ पे there is no syngamy, there is no meiosis occurring, no gametes formation. The spores are getting germinated, they are preparing their spores, they are living and again they are repeating the cycles or sexually. So there's a very small asexual cycle, and then we also find a larger, a bigger uh, sexual cycle where there is, union of the gametes, gametangia. Then there is a zygospores having zygote. Then there is meiosis. All these processes occurring the sexual cycle. So everything which is included in this is termed as the life cycle. वो सारे events जो एक फंगस के लाइफ में हो रहे हैं, they all are depicted in a circular form, starting from one point and again coming back to the same point in a life cycle. That would be termed as a life cycle of any organisms. This is pretty clear. In lower organisms, there has to be a asexual phase and a sexual phase, both included in the life cycles. So, life cycle in biology is the series of changes that members of a species undergo as they pass from the beginning of a given developmental stage to the inception of the same developmental stage. मतलब ये ऐसे हो गया, अंडे से मुर्गी, फिर मुर्गी से अंडा, coming back to the same developmental stage. How this process is occurring, that whole thing will come under the life cycle. Now, four things you remember to put in your life cycle. जब भी आपको life cycle का depiction करना होगा, दो चीजें, their asexual phase, how it is occurring, or the vegetative growth, vegetative development, how it is occurring, their sexual phase. Now, in sexual phase, you will always have fertilization and meiosis mentioned in your sexual phase. And whenever you are writing a life cycle, mention what stage is a haploid stage, what stage is a diploid stage. If you have put together these 4 points, then your life cycle is sorted. You can write a life cycle of any of organisms if you remember these 4 points in that particular organisms. So this is regarding life cycle. Now what we also say a term like alternation of generation. Now what is alternation of generation? My generation, then my children will come. Is that alternation of generation? What exactly means by alternation of generation? You have already come across this term many a times. So here we can see there are two kinds of uh, organism which goes in two different phases. One is haploid, having half the number of the chromosomes, and one is diploid, that is 2 and double the number of chromosomes. Here clearly we can see this whole life cycle is divided in two different parts. One is blue in color, haploid, having only n number of chromosomes. One is shown red in color, diploid, having 2n number of chromosomes. So this, whatever it is alternating from diploid to haploid, and again coming back to the same, that is called as the alternation of generation. Now, कितना period haploid है, कितना time diploid है, how much of it is there present, depending upon that there are different terms given to the alternation of generation. So basically that is alternation of generation. Now we'll see what kind of alternation generation is seen in members of the Phycomycetes. So in lower Phycomycetes, usually what we get to see is a haplontic kind of alternation of generation. Now as you see, haplontic, it does not have any diploid word in it. Mostly in a haplontic kind of a generation, major part of the organism, it remains as a haploid organisms. Now here we can see the red thing which is shown, the circle in the red, is the maximum part of the life cycle. This is the gametophyte, and it is the maximum part of the time present. Only very short we can see there is a haploid, diploid phase. That's why it is not mentioned in the life cycle. Very short. only the zygote, after the union, whatever the zygote is formed, only this much part is diploid. Whole of the life cycle is haploid, having n number of chromosomes. So such kind of a alternation of generation where only the zygote is 2n diploid is called as the haplontic life cycle. Then in the higher Phycomycetes or the members of Allomyces, we find very enlarged kind of a life cycle pattern, which is also called as the sporic or diplohaplontic. Now here we can see both terms are given equal weightage. So there is a diplophase, there is a haplophase, and both are equally important, having the same time span. So here we can see two kinds of thallic structure we can see. One is shown over here and one is shown over here. Though alag morphologically different, gametophyte and sporophyte are seen. This is 2n having hyphae 2n and the sporangiophores. This is n, only n number of chromosomes having hyphae and sporangiophore. सेम ही स्पीशीज, सेम ही जीनस, सेम ही ऑर्गेनिज्म, लेकिन उसके दो टाइप के थैलस स्ट्रक्चर हमको देखने मिलेंगे, हैप्लॉइड एज वेल एज डिप्लॉइड. इट इज कैपेबल ऑफ हैविंग असेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्शन, स्पोर्स प्रोड्यूस करना है, फिर अगेन इट विल जर्मिनेट, अगेन इट विल प्रिपेयर इट्स ओन स्पोर्स, अ स्मॉल asexual cycle over here. Gametophyte also capable of the same thing. It will produce gametes. It's capable of producing gametes. They will be N in chromosome structure. Again, different strains of the gametes, fertilization, and again it will give rise to a new zygote. From sporophytic generation to gametophytic generation, both are equally important. Half of the life cycle is sporophyte, half of the life cycle is gametophyte. Such kind of generation we will be calling it diplohaplontic life cycle और haplodiplontic life cycle, जहाँ पे एक ही टाइप के ऑर्गेनिजम्स में दो टाइप के आपको लाइफ पैटर्न दिखेंगे, मॉर्फोलॉजिकली डिफरेंट स्पोरोफाइट एंड गैमेटोफाइट यू विल फाइंड. So such kind would be called as the diplohaplontic life cycle pattern. Now, can any one of you tell me what could be a diplontic life cycle pattern? We discussed haplontic life cycle and diplohaplontic life cycle. What could be called as the diplontic life cycle pattern? What will happen in that? And do you all remember any example of that?
Dominance of sporophytic phase.
Okay, yes. This is very correct. Absolutely. Where a sporophytic phase would be dominant. In haplontic, the gametophyte phase was dominant and very small, short sporophytic phase. So can you give any example where a sporophytic?
Angiosperms and gymnosperms.
Yes, very correct. Very correct. Angiosperms and gymnosperms, they have maximum, the life or the plant what we see are a sporophyte where they produce gametes, very short gametophytic generation, that is pollens and ovum or ovary, female egg cells. And after the union, again the seed we get, that is zygote, a sporophytic generation, start of the sporophytic generation. Absolutely correct. So that is diplontic life cycle patterns. Even we humans, we have a diplontic life cycle pattern. We have two sets of chromosomes present in our human body, and only the gametes are half in chromosomal number. It's absolutely correct. So let us move further. These are the references which I have used for this presentation, and we with this, we end our today's session. If you have any queries, if you have any thing to ask, you are free to ask.